I'm excited to introduce this grand guest because he used to be Gilbert's boss, and he was always known as the boss around the NFL podcast. But he prefers to be known as Greg, but with that double G at the end, like Snoop Dogg, which is fitting because Greg is a hip hop historian and he's also a tennis historian. We, of course, are
Wow.
talking about the great Gregg Rosenthal, writer at NFL.com and founder of Courts of Thunder podcast. Greg, how are you? And please be honest with me. Was Gilbert a good employee?
He was a great employee. Why do you think I'm doing this podcast? I wouldn't a lot of these other guys out there forget about. No, he was great. You did your homework there, and you even gave the little Courts of Thunder, my tennis podcast plug, because we're ramping up here for the US Open. Even though football's starting, but we got some tennis too. Gil was great. Of course he was great. Look at it. Look how well he's doing now.
Thank you, Greg. And I just wanted to share a story before we start, talking about football, Greg, because I made sure Fernando knew and did his homework for the introduction, because he used to kind of quiz me at work if I used to listen to the podcast. And at the time, I wasn't really, a regular listener of the around the NFL podcast. But now it's my favorite podcast. You can ask me anything, Greg.
Really?
I will pass any quiz of the ATN or ATL podcast.
What? And I'm supposed to give you a quiz right now?
No, I was hoping you weren't. I just want you to believe.
No,
I think we should.
But I do listen regularly, though. I like it.
What's something? Give me Keith Hansis, that dad's nickname for Matt LaFleur. That's a tough quiz question. We're going way too deep.
That is okay. I just you caught me. But I do know he's a regular on the show. He comes in and he complains about the Jets doing poorly, and I love it. It's kind of like on a voicemail.
The bearded little boy, which was just the most derogatory name possible. And now Matt LaFleur is out here 26-6, looking pretty good.
But I do know that he's a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo's boyish looks, a good looking man. I know that.
There you go. Yeah, we probably talked too much about, quarterbacks looks on our show, but I appreciate it, Gil. That's awesome, man.
Greg, before we preview the AFC conference, I got to let you know that the theme of the NFL, this NFL season preview episode, it's a virtual Carne Asada with the Compas. For Mexicans, a Carne Asada basically means a party, a barbecue, a cookout.
Okay.
So you're the first guest to the Carne Asada, which is funny because every Mexican party has a white person who shows up first and leaves first. So how do you
I wouldn't
feel about
leave,
getting
though.
an invite to our virtual Carne Asada?
I wouldn't leave. You gotta invite me to the real thing too. Forget this virtual Zoom stuff, because I want that. Like if I always think, like, if I ever left SoCal, which I'm not looking to do, my kids are in school. I think they're gonna go all the way through high school here. But like the two toughest things to leave would be the time zone for football, I think, and the Mexican food. Those are the top two things that I would miss from Southern California.
There you go, Greg. Well, I don't know if Fernando told you. First of all, let me let you know. I gotta let you know what compa is. It's just pretty much friends, Spanish slang for homeboy, I guess. Is that the right word, Fernando?
Nice. Bro.
Okay, yeah. There you go. But Greg, I know it's not the real deal. No food out here. But I know they also, for Mexicans, we don't really play cornhole, but I know it's a big deal for the Around the NFL podcast. You guys like to play, get really competitive. So just pretend we have cornhole at this party. And, if we ever do get together, we will have it. We'll make sure just for you, Greg.
I don't need any cornhole.
Okay. You don't get as competitive as Dan and Mark get.
No, I just kind of sit on the side. That was kind of Dan and Wes, Chris Wesseling. They're very competitive. They were competitive at the corner. I was kind of the guy on the side, just having a drink and cracking jokes.
Okay. That's why you're perfect for the podcast. You like to chime in and give us your great analysis on football. But before we get started, let me ask you a question about food, because Mexican parties, we will have a taco guy, a taco stand. So when you get to the taco, el taquero, what are you ordering? How many tacos and what is your favorite meat to order?
Al pastor.
Okay.
Sure.
How many?
For sure. I mean, depends how big you kind of eyeball it. 3 probably, depending on how big the tacos are. But then mix it up. If they have the fried fish, get a fish and al pastor. That's usually my go-to.
It sounds like Greg that he's saying that's how I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with Trias Pastor, and then see
Yeah.
kind of where we're at, and then we'll go for seconds.
Yeah, keep going.
Greg, now that you have your invisible food, let's preview the AFC. Let's start with the AFC West. Gilbert tells me that you're all in on Teddy Bridgewater and the Broncos. Is that true? And where do you have the Broncos finishing in the division?
I guess I have them second. I got to start writing these things down for the NFL.com. Are you both Chargers fans? Well, Gil can't be a fan. He's like the beat reporter. But were you a Chargers fan?
No, not at all. No.
Oh, no, you weren't. What about you? No, neither of you?
Growing up, I mean, I'm from San Diego, so like that was the team. But like, I don't care either way. I'm surprised that you have the Broncos second in the
Wait, I want to get into this because like Chargers. I am curious about how this is all going to work. You know, now they're moving into the new stadium. I was there at the last, what people thought was going to be the last Chargers game. Did a whole story on it, like hung out with everyone, grilling, you know, with all the weed smoke around me. And it was like beautiful. It was a beautiful day. They thought it was the last game. They ended up firing Mike McCoy that day, I think, too.
I remember.
And then they did, even after all that, after Eric Weddle does the whole thing in the stadium, you know, says goodbye. They came back for one more year, but I'm like curious, like what? Yeah, so you gave up on them when they left. Like what?
No.
Chargers fans are you never?
Like I've been no. It's not that I gave up on them. I started doing media and stuff. So like I left the fanship. I started like being around the team in 2013. So that's when I left the fanship behind. And I was like, okay, I need to be dedicated at this because you can't. I mean, you can't. To me, you can't cover the NFL or a team and be biased or have that fanship. So I completely left it behind, but like my little brother's still a huge fan. My cousin's a huge fan. My best friends are still all huge Charger fans.
Okay, so they stuck with it.
Yeah, they stuck with. A lot of people in San Diego actually stuck with it. That's what I was telling Gilbert is that I went to Keenan Allen's camp. He had it down here in Torrey Pines a couple of weeks ago, and there was over 300 kids that participated, and a lot of Charger fans there with their gear. And I was like, "Are you guys all like still Charger fans?" And I asked a couple of people. And they're like, hell yeah, don't listen to the media. Like, we still love the Chargers down here. Don't listen
We're the media, Fernando.
No, well, he said, don't listen to the local media down here. Like, we're still fans. We love the Chargers, and we're still going to, like, a lot of the people said, yeah, I have season tickets for SoFi. So it's going to be interesting to see how many SoFi season tickets are from San Diego.
Well, it makes it easy when you stumble into, like, the best quarterback pick possible, like one of the most exciting quarterbacks to come into the league in the last 15 years, to go from Breeze for a minute to Rivers to Herbert. Like, you should be a fan, and I'm excited about the Chargers too. I think the AFC is better than it's been in a long time. It's really deep. I think you could go 10, 11 teams and be like, wow, those look like playoff teams. I think they could make the playoffs.
Have young quarterbacks.
And I think they could make the playoffs in the NFC, but it's going to be tougher in the AFC. I give the Broncos a little bit of an edge over the Chargers because I think the talent around Teddy Bridgewater on offense is unreal. Like, KJ Hamler's their fourth wide receiver, and he's a baller. Jerry Jeudy's a 1. Cortland Sutton's a 1. Noah Fant could be a top 5 tight end. And they got backups that are better than some teams' starters. Albert Obuikunum, the tight end, I really like him. Like, they got a lot going on offense, and then their defense on paper to me is a top 5 defense. And the problem with the Chargers, why I just slot them like one spot behind, is I just don't know what that offense is going to look like with the transition. Offensive coordinator was not impressed by Joe Lombardi, in his previous stops, particularly. I do worry a little bit about, could Herbert take a step back? And it's just a little more unknown. I think they're going to have a winning record. And, I think they could make a wild card spot, but it feels tough to pick 2 for the wild card in the AFC West. So I have the Broncos second. I think the Broncos could be nasty. They're going to be a lot to deal with because no one is throwing a secondary at the other quarterbacks in the AFC West like the Broncos will be.
What are your thoughts on the Raiders and the Chiefs?
I mean, the Chiefs, to me, you just pencil them in for like 12 wins like you did with Brady throughout the Patriots era. And then you see, is this a bad Chiefs year or a good Chiefs year? To me, it's hard to tell going in, but I kind of just pencil them in as one of the top 2 or 3 teams. And whether it's like they're as good as they were a couple years ago or whether it's a little more competitive, we'll see. I think they have questions on defense, the depth in their offensive talent, but I just believe in Mahomes so much and Reed that I slot him first every time, and it's like who's battling for second.
Or Greg, I should probably ask you a football question, but I can't stop looking at your turtle picture in the back. What's the backstory on the turtle?
I do another podcast. I could do too many podcasts. Called the Jesselnick and Rosenthal Vanity Project, and we had a sponsor called Paint Your Life, who they do any painting you want of any photo you want. And so we had just lost our pet turtle, just died. My wife kind of killed him by mistake, left him out in the heat, and our kids were sad about it. We thought it'd be funny to get them to paint the turtle, put that up. It just makes me laugh.
Are you kidding? Like to me, it's the I like football behind him. I think that's even
we went to a community college, Santa Monica Community College game like 3 years ago, and my daughter made that sign just to hold up, and I always thought it was cute. They're both huge football fans. My daughter's a huge Rams fan. They like the Chargers too. We went to SoFi for the preseason game, and yeah, she held it up as like a 5 or 6 year old. I thought that was cute.
That's awesome.
I like that, Greg. And you know what? Now that I think about it, Greg, I think on going back on the whole fandom thing, I think you probably got me confused because I might have told you that I grew up as a Vikings fan, so Teddy Bridgewater was my boy at the time. So I'm kind of have like a soft spot for Teddy B. So when I see you tweeting about him, I'm like, okay.
So now he's Teddy B.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not root for him? Like I now that I'm older and stuff, like I root for players more. I still root for teams. It depends on the year. I do keep my fandom. I don't go cover them in person, which helps do that. I just root for who's a good story. And to me, Teddy's just an awesome dude, and he's more fun to watch than you think too. He's good in the pocket, and I've always thought he's a little underrated. So I like him landing in such a good spot. I really think this is a good division, though. Like the Raiders, they could be okay. I'm not totally believing that they're just going to fall off a cliff here. Like they've been a solid team the last couple of years on offense.
Well, and I mean, John Gruden still has 6 years left on that contract.
All they got to do, if they had the 18th or 20th ranked defense the last 2 years, they would have made the playoffs. He is an offensive coach, and I think he's kind of delivered on the offense. Derek Carr is better right now than I think he's ever been, and I think they could be okay. Like it's a fun division. Any of those games to me should be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's very, very intriguing in the AFC West, and seeing what Gus Bradley, former Chargers defensive coordinator, what he does in Las Vegas should be interesting because a lot of the former players are going over there. It's kind of Chargers 702 Sin City.
They were a little underachieving though with Gus Bradley, don't you think? I know they had a lot of injuries, but I never really. They had like one good year under Gus Bradley.
Yeah, 2018, and then it kind of fell off last year. It was pretty bad for Gus Bradley's scheme there.
And fans got frustrated because there was no blitzing, no disguises. It was just all plain. So I don't know how the Raider fans are going to feel about that.
But Greg, let's move over to the AFC North. Speaking of fandom, our guy Mark Sessler is a big Cleveland Browns fan. He talks about it in the pod a lot. And it could be Mark's year with the Browns. They're pretty stacked when I look at them in position by position. A lot of great talent. But you still got the Ravens, you still got the Steelers, and we'll see how Joe Burrow does with the Bengals. But kind of give me your assessment of the AFC North, and are the Browns the team to beat right now?
I'm really torn over who to pick for the playoffs because if you put in the Broncos, which I'm going to do, if you put in two teams from the AFC East, I think the AFC East could get 2 or 3 teams. That division looks better than ever. Like the AFC is so deep. I'm toying with not putting the Browns in the playoffs at all because I do like the Ravens just a little bit better. I trust their organization more. I trust Lamar Jackson a little more than Baker Mayfield. You do worry about like a team that improved as much as Cleveland did a year ago. I know their defense, they added a lot of pieces. It looks like it was smart. But you do worry about when you make that big of an improvement, do you step back a little bit? And it's a really good division. I think the Steelers can still be a playoff team. That's what I mean when I'm talking about the AFC. I think you could go 3 teams in the West, the East, and the North that are like legit playoff type of teams where if they were in the NFC, I just would put those teams in, and that includes the Browns and the Steelers, like whose defense is loaded. I think it's a toss-up. Like all 3 of those teams, I don't see them separated by much. I'm leaning on Baltimore because I usually just kind of lean on what I root for, and I love watching Lamar Jackson play. And they're a team like the Patriots. They're always better after Thanksgiving. Like they're going to have these issues early in the year, and their defense, especially with Martindale, Like they figure out what they have, what they don't have, and they're a lot more to deal with down the stretch than they are at the beginning of the year. And I guess I haven't seen that from, the Browns defensive coordinator or their offense like year after year. I kind of want to see them back it up.
Greg, in the AFC South, it seems like Julio Jones and the Titans are the clear favorites to win in that weak division. Do you agree, or do you feel like people are looking past the Colts? And what do you think Urban Meyer's first year is going to be like?
I was on the like kind of rooting against Urban Meyer train pretty quickly, just because he seems so full of himself and he has so many friends in the media. Like that is always the combination that bothers me. Like, remember, no one ever criticized Jeff Fisher for like 5 years because he had so many friends in the media. And it's like everyone worked with Urban Meyer at Fox and other people. He worked at NFL Network too. And it's like, I don't think his approach is necessarily going to work. And I don't like the coaching staff he put together. So I feel bad for Trevor Lawrence. I think they could have some problems. I do think the Titans are the favorite. I think the Colts aren't necessarily upgrading at quarterback. I think it's a downgrade going from 39-year-old Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz, even if Wentz is healthy, to me is a downgrade. And they don't have a left tackle right now. They're asking for a lot of young players to step up on their defense too. So I think they lost a lot in the offseason. I do think the Titans are the favorite.
Greg, we got to ask you because Fernando's brother, he's known as Dan and Dago in this podcast. We have a running bit or storyline that Dan and Dago loves Tim Tebow. And he's kind of, down in the dumps right now because he didn't make the 53-man roster. He got cut pretty quick. And I know Dan is listening. He's probably mad at me for bringing it up. But Greg, what do you think about the whole kind of, I don't know, should I call it a sham, having Tim Tebow on the roster? Are you a little surprised he didn't make it as far as we thought he was going to make it? Maybe down to the final day?
I mean, no. What's that saying? It's like, don't be sad that it's over. Be happy you got anything. What was the point of bringing Tim Tebow in there? I never thought he had any chance because playing tight end's hard and he's old. Like, he couldn't have played tight end at his athletic peak, and he's not at that now. It's just like they talk about these things. And here's a good example on Jacksonville. Remember, Travis Etienne, who's out for the year, is too bad. Urban Meyer was like, yeah, maybe we'll play him at receiver. And someone followed up on that midway through camp to Bevel, their offensive coordinator. And he's like, yeah, nah, he's a running back. It's like, you can't just like change positions in the NFL. This is not the SEC where Etienne's trying to beat like Mississippi's linebacker. Like, it's not going to happen for you, much less Tim Tebow trying to change from quarterback to tight end. So how many more goodbyes do we need? I feel like we've said goodbye to Tim Tebow like 6 different times at this point.
My question about this whole thing is, like, if Urban Meyer just completely flames out, kind of Nick Saban-esque, will he jump back into college football and try and get people to forget about his NFL failure and be like, hey, don't forget, I'm a great college coach too?
I'm glad you brought up Saban. That's a great example, because you know what? He didn't flame out in my mind. I remember those teams really well. He went 9-7 that first year with a bad Dolphins roster, and I remember how furious he was the whole time. Like, they went 9-7 with a pretty bad roster, and he was like angry. And when I saw Urban Meyer on the sideline in that Saints game in the preseason, his head ready to blow off, and like, I'm just thinking, A, this is a bad coach for Trevor Lawrence, and B, how's he going to handle going 4-13, 6-11? He's used to having his players be way better than the other players. He's used to winning. So is Trevor Lawrence. Like, Nick Saban could not handle going 9-7. They went 6-10 the next year, and he was out. He was out after 2 years, and I could see a similar sort of thing where it's just like, you're not used to losing, and this is going to take a minute to build that team up.
I don't remember who told me this story, but I heard that somebody had a heat stroke during a Nick Saban practice.
Yeah, I remember that.
Steps over the player and goes, "What the hell are you guys looking at? Get back to work." And I was like, "Geez, like, that's just how Nick Saban is, I guess." But I thought that was so interesting. The story, just the whole aspect of when college coaches come to the NFL, and I feel like that's why guys like Lincoln Riley might stay away from it.
I don't think their egos can handle it. Like, you gotta. Doesn't mean that NFL coaches don't have massive egos, but you have to sort of be humble enough to understand what the game is, and the game is going to be like, you got to be happy to go to 11 and you got to work your way up, and you're going to lose 7 times, sometimes even in a good season.
Speaking of losing, Bill Belichick is kind of not known for that, and he had a losing season a year ago. So let's get to the AFC East. Greg, you kind of mentioned it. Your team and the Throne of East. See, I listened to the podcast with New England, not doing so well, but they have Mac Jones now, Cam Newton, kind of a fun little quarterback battle. The Jets, Dan's team has Zach Wilson. It seems like he's a fun player to watch. And then 2 on the Dolphins can make some noise as well. But it seems like the Bills might be the team of that division. What's kind of your assessment overall for the AFC East, which you kind of view already? You mentioned really competitive.
I think it's the best AFC East in 20 years. Since like right when Brady got there, it was pretty competitive. Or in the couple years before that too, even with Bledsoe, it hasn't been that good. That's where I'm trying to squeeze in 3 AFC East teams. I'm thinking of putting the Dolphins in the playoffs, the Patriots in the playoffs, and the Broncos in the playoffs, and only one gets in from the North. Because if you look at the out of division schedule and the strength of schedule at Football Outsiders, which I trust they're kind of DVOA, the AFC East kind of has an easier schedule than some of the other divisions. It'll be tougher in the division than usual, and the Dolphins are just better than the sum of their parts. They really are good at game planning, and I think Tua looks a lot better this year. And I think the Patriots, I'm kind of optimistic about how their defense is shaping up. I think adding Kyle Van Noy and Dante Hightower back, they have some young players. I think their defense is going to be a lot better than it was. And I think Mac Jones will probably be their quarterback. I'm starting to think week 1. And if it's not week 1, it'll be sooner than that. And so I could see all 3 of those teams making the playoffs, but the Bills are the favorites. So something has to go seriously wrong. To me, they might be the AFC favorites, certainly co-favorites with the Chiefs.
That week 4 matchup, I'm so intrigued for it. The Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh my
God. It's going to be Mac Jones and Tom Brady. That's the real question right there.
I know that that's the Super Bowl for Bill Belichick. They say, he pretends like this stuff doesn't matter to him, but of course it's going to matter to him and that Patriots team. I think the Bucs are going to come out fast, and the Patriots usually better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning, but there's a lot of reasons to think the Patriots will bounce back. Their offensive line really is built to run block. It's a really good veteran offensive line, not really a weakness anywhere on that line. And so if you can protect, you can be average on offense, and I think the defense will be a lot better than that.
And they have a good offense or a good running back group too. Hell, they just
really good
Sonny Michel away, and they still have 3 or 4 really good running backs.
All right,
they're going to be something to deal with. I think Bill did not like being a loser last year. They were lucky to win 7 games. Chargers fans wouldn't think that because they dropped a 40 burger on them. But other than that game, they did
45-0.
For the most part, they kind of looked like a 5-11 team that won a couple extra games.
That's how we knew last year, Greg, that this Chargers team was really bad. A year ago, when you lose to probably the worst Patriots team in the last 20 years, 45-0. You're not doing anything right for that team. But Greg, I know you're busy. You are on NFL Network. You're on TV. You got 3 podcasts. So we gotta let you go. But before we do, Greg, I know you're big time. I want to take
hurry.
Well, then okay, we'll buy some time. I know you want to buy some time for what I'm going to say next, because I want to take a second and remember Chris Wesseling and extend my condolences for such a big loss for you and even for me. I got to know Chris when I worked at NFL.com. I got to know his wife, Lakeisha, and I always admired Chris Wesseling as a writer, as a person, his knowledge for football, and his whole approach. He's kind of not the most talkative guy, kind of quiet, but when it came down to actually knowing what you're talking about, nobody did it better than Chris Wesseling. But also in the podcast, he was very outgoing, the mailman, very, personable. So I think, you guys and Dan and Mark having fun with Chris, I really love those episodes and getting to know him from a different point of view. So again, my condolences to you and the whole Around the NFL podcast family and Lakeisha. It was a sad day for me when I found out because Chris was big for me during those 2 years I worked with you guys at NFL.com.
Yeah, he was a great dude. Like, that was back when I was a boss of some people, and technically his boss at Roto World and at the NFL. But I looked up to him because he had a great perspective on life, and we were good friends. And he helped me actually decide to get out of the boss game, to like kind of follow what you want to do in life. in life. And if that's not it, then do that. And that's how he approached life. And yeah, Keish is still one of my best friends, of course. And so we miss him, but we keep doing our thing and in his spirit, and we love talking about him. And so I'm always happy to talk about him and keep his name alive. Appreciate that, Gil.
Yeah.
Greg, before we let you go, I need to ask that shirt. Who
Oh,
is it?
yeah. This is a Kemba Walker shirt.
Walker.
This is definitely like I'm not doing any other thing on camera.
I was
today,
like racking my brain. I thought it said Booker at first, so I'm like, oh, maybe he's a Devin Booker fan, but okay, it's a Kemba Walker.
My son's name is Walker, and so we're big on just like getting him lots of things with his name on it. And I'm a UConn basketball fan, so when Kemba came to the Celtics, it was like I'm a huge Kemba fan, even though he's not quite the same player as he was. But I still rep for him. I'm gonna have to watch some
So did your son have a Walker Texas Ranger shirt or anything like that?
No, but he was watching the draft and he was like, I got a new favorite player, Walker Little. I don't know if you know who
offensive lineman.
He's a tackle on the Jaguars now. He's like,
yep.
I'm Little Walker too. I'm like, okay, we got to get you a Walker Little jersey now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Is that Walker behind you in the picture right there next to the Lock It Up trophy?
Yeah, that is. That's my son and daughter now. They're in
awesome.
1st and 4th grade, so I'm getting up there. Got some old kids.
Oh wow, congratulations. Well,
thanks,
Greg, we appreciate. Anything else you wanna say before we let you go here?
No, I mean, I'm disappointed that Gil's just like trash in the team he covers, but I thought this was like more of a Chargers podcast or what. So because I'm kind of
a reporter,
into it.
Greg.
I mean, I was such a big Phillip Rivers fan, and I've pretty much jumped right over to Justin Herbert. He's got to be in my top 3 favorite players right now in the NFL. So, and Rivers was right there, and it was like a seamless transition for me. So I'm kind of a sneaky Chargers fan, but I guess you're not.
I was gonna say, Greg, I listen to the podcast regularly, as I keep saying, so I want to let you know that I do listen. I'm not the same guy from 5 years ago.
I don't care if you listen. Back then I was just giving you grief because it was like you worked there. I don't care. I'm always surprised that anyone listens.
It's kind of funny because I was thinking to myself, like, is that a job requirement to listen to a podcast? And I was really freaking out, so I really got into it.
That was my sense of humor, probably at the time. I'm sorry that you took that too literal. Yeah,
I don't keep me along, but there was another story where you quizzed me again. And maybe this is my fault because I did say it in my interview. I told you that I really love football. I will watch any game. I don't care who is playing. It was like a Thursday night football game. It was the annual, bad game between the Jaguars and the Titans on TNF. And one day you came by my little office or desk, I guess, in the back. You asked me, are you excited to watch this Thursday night football? And I told you, why would I watch these 2 terrible teams? And you called me out. Like, I thought you cared about football. I thought you loved football. And I felt like, oh man, I'm a liar now. But I told you the truth that day.
That was probably my sense of humor again. But yeah, some of those were rough. Little Blake Bortles versus like early Mariota. That they always sneak that one into TNF. I think this year that's been replaced by there's like a Texans Jaguars game in week 3 TNF or something. So
hey, Trevor Lawrence versus Tyrod Taylor.
Wait, that's week 1, so that can't be right. No. Now that I think here, that's my here. I'm gonna give you a big week 1 pick, right? Before I leave. I'm really feeling the Texans somehow as home underdogs week 1 over the Jaguars. Like this Texans team, I feel like is gonna be like kind of like the Dolphins under Brian Flores. They'll win 4 or 5 games, and everyone will be like, "Oh yeah, they're actually," they'll be impressed with that.
They have a lot of good players under 1-year contract.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. It's more like an anti-Jaguars pick, so I think they'll be better than the Jaguars.
That's Fernando
for you.
So you got them winning?
I got them winning. That's it.
All right.
Nice little home upset. I'm locking that up for week 1.
So like you're locking in right there. We're locking it in. Greg Rosenthal.
Yeah, I'm locking in the Texans.
What is it? Make it rain, Greg? I remember that. Also, that little bit you had.
Well, Greg, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining Compas on the Beat. You're a compa. Anytime you want to jump on, we'd be excited to have you.
No, that would be fun, but I'd be more interested in the real life tacos.
There you go. We got to make it happen, Gilbert.
Let's do it.
We got you.
All right. See you guys.